Everyone's life is either a warning or an example. A quote by Tony Robbins.
Don't cover me, babe. Your shadow's hanging over me.
The majority of our lives will be lived spontaneously, taking life how it comes.
And don't cover me, babe. Don't lay yourself on top of me.
When it comes to the quote by Tony Robbins, it's a true statement. We learn from the mistakes of our past. That way our present can make way for a better future. But although we can choose to learn from the past, we as humans often recreate the mistakes, which is what coined the phrase, history repeating itself. But how many times does history have to repeat itself before we learn? Sadly, in some situations when history repeats itself, it's a fatal mistake. A mistake that can't be taken back.
Don't cover me, babe. Your shadow's hanging over me. Breathe on me.
March 1st, 2007. The world would make way for Nivia Danner. She would be brought into this world by her father, Leon Bradshaw, and her mother, Nivia Danner. Upon entering this world, Nivea wouldn't come alone. She was a fraternal twin, with her mother also giving birth to her brother. North Carolina would be the place that she would be born and raised. It's also the place that she would receive her education. Growing up, Nivea was instilled with family values. She was also raised in the church. And with that, she was a loving person. She understood empathy. Nivea is described as someone who is loving, caring, someone with a smile that would brighten your darkest days. From early on in life, Nivea would discover that she had many talents. One of her talents was dancing, in which she was a member of a dance team at her church. But she also had a voice that is described as anointed, someone who could sing and get you lost in the very moment. When Nivia Danner was 8 years old, she would experience a hardship. Her father, Leon Bradshaw, would lose his life. On August 30th of 2015, around 5 a.m., Statesville police would be dispatched to Wilmington Avenue, where they were responding to an altercation. Shortly after arriving on the scene, officers would find Deleon Dalton suffering from a gunshot wound, who happened to be the brother of Leon Bradshaw. However, Leon Bradshaw would be pronounced deceased on the scene. This altercation had stemmed from an argument that started at a party and eventually spiraled out of control. Initially, when this case was investigated, it quickly went cold. None of the partygoers would speak on anything they saw, which made this case hard to investigate. But although the authorities have a rough job ahead of them, they wouldn't quit. It would take 3 years to solve the case, in which afterwards, 35-year-old Okira Donna Myers would be charged with murder in the 2015 death of Leon Bradshaw. Justice would be served. The years after losing her father would be tough for Nivea, but as the saying goes, life must go on. Nivea was a positive person who understood that everything happens for a reason, and it's all part of a bigger plan. By the year of 2021, Nivia Danner would be 14 years old and residing in Gastonia, North Carolina. By now, with her great personality, she's acquired a lot of friends. She's also acquired a lot of attention from her singing voice. She often took to social media to show off her talents. Nivia Danner was a person with dreams and aspirations. Undoubtedly, someone headed for the stars. However, something would occur that would alter her future, and her dreams that she was striving to make a reality would only remain dreams. Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. At approximately 1:18 p.m., Central District officers would be dispatched to the 300 block of North Chester Street, located in North Carolina. Officers are responding to a call about a medical emergency. After arriving on the scene, they would quickly realize that they were outside of a bail bondsman's business, and inside of the parking lot, they would locate Nivia Danner suffering from a gunshot wound. Realizing this, Nivea would be transported to the local hospital, but shortly after arriving, she would succumb to her injuries. 14-year-old Nivia Danner would be pronounced deceased, and now this medical emergency that the authorities responded to has become a homicide investigation.
Right now, Gastonia police are on the hunt for whoever is responsible in the shooting death of a 14-year-old girl. It happened this afternoon just outside of downtown in the parking lot of a bail bonding company. Fox 46's Will Lewis joins us now from the Gastonia Police Department.
Now, Will, this shooting has hit the owner of that business very hard.
Yeah, it sure has, Alicia and Brian, because he was thinking about his own children and all the children in this community. He says it's a tragic day for everyone.
Owner Nicholas Rogers says this is the first time there has been any trouble.
Obviously, in our neighborhood, we deal with a lot of violence, but to see it firsthand right at your door is obviously something that you would, never forget.
Rogers says a car pulled up to the property and employees were helping a person trying to get a loved one out of jail, but the company was unable to execute the bond.
Only one person came inside the establishment. The rest stayed outside. They heard something, a yell or scream on the outside.
Parents were shooting, but I thought it was back down through that way or something. I didn't pay no attention. So I laid there about 10 more minutes. I said, let me look out the window. I looked out the window, that's when I see the police lined up.
The shot hit a 14-year-old girl.
Now, investigators continue to work this case, but they have no additional description of the suspects. But if you know anything about it, please call Gastonia Police. Reporting live in Gastonia, Will Lewis, Fox 46.
Initially, the authorities thought this case would be hard to solve, because when they arrived, they found Nivia Danner in a parking lot with no witnesses, no one to detail what occurred. After analyzing the scene and bagging anything they saw as evidence, one of the detectives would notice a security camera in the parking lot of the business. So that's the direction this would move in. They would go inside of the business and request the footage, and they would quickly come to find that Nivia Danner arrived in a vehicle. This vehicle had 4 passengers, Nivia Danner and 3 other unidentified people. After arriving to the business, one person would exit the vehicle and go inside of the bail bondsman place, but the other 3 would remain inside of the car. Shortly afterwards, Nivea is seen exiting the vehicle, looking injured, but then the vehicle speeds off. The only thing the authorities know at this point is that the vehicle was a 2013 Chevrolet Impala with temporary plates, but also a dent located on the left part of the back bumper. Hours after the security footage was pulled, the vehicle would be located in a neighboring county, abandoned. Now that the authorities have the vehicle, it wouldn't be hard to locate a suspect. After all, this is a vehicle with temporary tags, meaning either it's new or they just haven't applied for their tags, but nonetheless, they can trace the information. The next day, on September 15th of 2021, the authorities would announce a suspect. The suspect was then 19-year-old Santonio Eskridge. Now that they have their suspect, they would turn to the media and release his name, but also his photo, and let the area know that they're looking for him. Later that day, Santonio would be taken into custody. The authorities would alert the media and let them know that the threat is now off the streets.
Gastonia police say they've captured the teenager accused of gunning down a 14-year-old girl. It's this man, 19-year-old Santonio Eskridge. He was taken into custody today. Now, officials say the two were parked outside of a business on North Chester Street when Eskridge shot and killed 14-year-old Nivia Danner. Police are still trying to figure out what led up to that shooting.
The culprit is now in custody of the authorities, but the family is now planning a funeral. A funeral for someone who was loved, a talented, bright soul who was taken way too soon.
Tonight, family and friends said a final goodbye to the 14-year-old girl that was shot and killed in Gastonia last week.
Free flowing, sailing with the wind, not knowing how this story ends.
Last week, Gastonia police charged 19-year-old Santonio Eskridge with Danner's murder. Officers say they responded to North Chester Street outside of a bail bond business in Gastonia just after 1 p.m. last Tuesday, where they found Danner shot.
Home, sweet home.
Detectives believe Eskridge and Danner traveled to the business together and that Eskridge shot Danner and drove off. Police have not released a motive. Nivia's family wanted her service to be about celebrating the life she lived and not the life that was stolen. Her uncle, Terry Danner, described Nivea as a bright spirit surrounded by love. Now her family and friends are left with the memories of a beautiful young life taken too soon. In Gastonia, Indira Esquiva, WCNC Charlotte.
Santonio Eskridge would have his day in court, but in a turn of events, Santonio would show up to court and take a plea deal. Part of this deal was acknowledging exactly what transpired on that day. Santonio would explain to the authorities that on that Tuesday afternoon, Nivia Danner himself, Nivia's twin brother, and 2 other people would be riding around looking for a bail bondsman. The crew would eventually end up in downtown Gastonia, North Carolina, at a bail bonding's office. They were at this location to bond out a mutual friend. He says that one person in the vehicle went to meet with the bondsman while the others stayed outside. While waiting inside of the car, he explains that Nivia Danner began fidgeting with a knife. Nivia then, in a playful manner, raised the knife towards Santonio. He says at this time it was only a joke. There was no ill intent. But after she raised the knife, he then drew his weapon and pointed it towards Nivia. When he pointed it towards Nivia, he would let her know that the trigger was very light and it wouldn't take much for the firearm to go off. But even though he told her this, they kept playing. She would point the knife and then he would point his weapon. He says on the last time that they were playing around, Nivia had slapped the firearm away. And while she was slapping it away, the firearm would then discharge. And he tells the authorities that this was a complete accident. And again, there was no ill intent, and he never set out to harm her. When Santonio showed up to court, he would plead guilty to second-degree murder, in which afterwards he would receive a sentence from 8.5 years to 11.5 years. During his day in court, he would stand and he would face the family, and he would apologize for the accident. He would reassure the family that he didn't mean to do it, that this was all just one big misunderstanding, and he never meant to pull the trigger. Due to others' testimony, they would testify that they were friends. They were well acquainted with each other, and everyone around them believes this was truly an accident. I'm not here to judge whether or not it was an accident or intentional, but the fact still remains. At the end of the day, a 14-year-old girl lost her life. Someone so young. Someone who hadn't even begun to live. If you're listening to this story, let this be a learning experience. Playing around with weapons never leads to anything positive. 14-year-old Nivia Danner lost her life. Someone with dreams, with every intention on achieving them. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this was totally preventable. Always remember that every action has a consequence. Rest in peace, Nivia Danner. Thank you for being a light for others.
You gave me this feeling that I never felt before, and I deserved it, I know I deserved it. This became something that's impossible to ignore, 'cause baby, I was wondering maybe, can I have back my baby? If I did something special, would that make me look crazy? If you ask me, I'm ready.